Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I am your host, Jamie Bateman, and I'm super pumped today to have with me an old friend of mine, Jay Jablonski. Jay is an actor, producer. We'll get into all the other things he's dabbled in over the years. Jay, how are you doing today?
I'm great, man. It's great to be with you, Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we were joking before we hit record that you were up all night and nervous about this. You know, you're really not good behind the Zoom
Yeah,
camera.
your reputation as the hardest presser on the interview circuit is
Yeah,
it's legendary. So emotional.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, well, I'll try to put you at ease and we'll make it, we'll get through this.
I appreciate you.
So, Jay, for the listener out there who is not familiar with you, who are you and what are you up to today?
My name is Jay Jablonski. I am an actor and a film producer. Um, as you mentioned, we went to Gettysburg College together.
Yeah.
My story of kind of how I got into this is I didn't plan on being in the entertainment industry. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in the military when I was young, and some injuries while at Gettysburg prevented that from coming to fruition. But it brought me to this path. So I
Yeah,
guess I'm very grateful for that.
absolutely. So, I know we'll get into your most your recent movie release, which is exciting. Um, Yeah, it's pretty awesome what you're up to. But let's dive. You referred to your backstory, so let's dive in.
Yeah.
So obviously the podcast is called From Adversity to Abundance, and you and I had a call before, and we talked about a good bit of the adversity that you've been through, which is very very real. And the goal is not to make anybody cry or anything like that, but if it happens, but no, I appreciate you being vulnerable. Before we get into this, I'll just say I appreciate you being vulnerable with the listener. And the whole intent here is to inspire people and to let them know that, hey, look, you're gonna go through some rough times. We all do. And this is Jay's story, and we're here to pull out lessons that you've learned, and hopefully we can prevent some pain and hardship for other people, and then talk about some of the adversity that you've reached, whether whatever shape that has taken.
Yeah.
So you referred to Gettysburg. Maybe is that a good place to start?
Sure. Yeah. When we were when we were at Gettysburg in the 90s, Jamie, we're getting old. I went into school. I had always been I was sort of a poster boy for ADHD my whole life. Back when I was a kid, ADHD wasn't really on the forefront of things. You were just
Yeah.
sort of known as an asshole, um, like
So
by
you were
teachers
cutting
and
edge on that scene. Yeah.
exactly. Um, but I had a lot of energy. I think we talked about that, and I truly, from as young as I can remember, I felt like I was plugged in. I felt like I had like truly like electricity, just so
Hmm.
much energy running through me, and
Hmm.
that could be a beautiful thing if harnessed correctly
Hmm.
and allocated to a good source, or it could
Sure.
be a real negative thing, especially if I didn't get it out. And so going into college, I was an athlete throughout high school, everything. I lived to play football. I was not the Jamie Bateman of lacrosse to the Gettysburg Bullet football team at all, but I did love playing, and and I very much identified with as being an athlete my entire life.
Yeah.
And so when I went into college, as I said, I was an economics major. I had no intention or thought of really going into the acting world. Though I got to tell you, I was always very, very intrigued by the acting world. I used to do plays when I was a little kid in like fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade. And then by the time I got to high school, it was all about sports. So there were no
Hmm.
time for the plays anymore. When I went to college, I took an economics degree, or
Hmm.
I took an economics major,
Hmm.
strictly because I grew up about 30 miles outside Manhattan. I figured I'll
Sure.
probably end up in finance in some way or another. But
Makes
what I
sense.
really wanted to do was go to the Marine Corps. So I spent my whole freshman year applying to and testing for officer candidate school for the United States Marine Corps.
Hmm.
And I was accepted at the end of the year. I went to Quantico for about 2 months, and it's just a beatdown. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely.
they weed you out. I think we started with maybe 30 or 36 guys in our platoon or something. It's been a
Mm.
long time, so don't
Sure.
numbers might be off, but I think we graduated with like 11, and
Wow.
it was the hardest and also the best thing I had ever done. It was awesome. And when I came back to school, um, I went right into football camp. So having spent 2 months at OCS
Hmm.
in that heat and everything, and with those
Yeah.
physical demands, I had
Yeah.
lost a ton of weight. And
Sure.
I remember my OSO, my officer selection officer, said something to the effect of, "Your football coach is going to hate me," because I was so skinny going into
Yeah.
camp.
And you
Um,
were a running back, right?
I was a running
Yeah.
back, and I gotta say, so sophomore year, so during that preseason, I felt like I was performing pretty well and everything, very well actually. And I got kind of, not to get too into it, but I butted heads a bit with my coach,
Hmm.
and it was over playing time and this and that. And
Hmm.
long story short, my emotional quotient back
Hmm.
then was
Hmm.
was not nearly what it is today.
Hmm.
And in and I got we got drunk one night, and
Hmm.
we were talking. I think it was about something with football and everything, and I was pissed at the situation, and I put my
Hmm.
hand through the window, and I cut the nerves and tendons in my right hand, and
Wow.
it ended that season completely. Obviously,
Right.
completely
Wow.
my fault. And what could have been a really good warning sign for me to
Yeah.
maybe leave alcohol in the past.
Mm.
um, I just didn't heed that warning whatsoever.
Sure. Yeah. No, and that's
uh,
I just had a guest on the show who we talked about compounding. He actually talked about, you know, now granted, we're using hindsight here. We're much older, as you said, Jay. It's very easy for us to look back and say Jay should have made a better decision in this situation, in these circumstances, of course, right? But
right.
you took a challenging situation and you made it worse, just to at the risk of beating you up over this.
No,
But
no, no, please,
you made it,
absolutely.
you compounded the situation because you decided to get not only get drunk, but also then, lost control of what probably, so then you damaged your hand and then you lost your season. So,
Yes.
and again, easy for me to sit here and pick you apart, but
No, no, please.
um, I guess for the listener, it's like, look, bad things are going to happen. You're going to have situations where you're not playing as much as you want to, or I'm assuming you weren't happy with you thought you should be playing more. You weren't mad that you were playing too much. I'm guessing. But so you took a challenging situation and you made it worse unintentionally, but you made it worse. And so now you missed your entire season.
Yep.
And as I can relate to, and many listeners can relate to, your identity is wrapped up in this. And so it's not just, oh, how many yards was I gonna, rush for that season or whatever. It's like this is who you are back then, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So okay. So what
um
happened? How did you? Yeah. Go ahead.
Jamie, hold on one second. I got
Absolutely.
my
Uh,
so so well, it's a couple things. You talked about compounding what was already a bad issue, and hindsight is 2020. And I'm really good at beating myself up at
mhm,
times, as I'm sure we all
mhm,
are. One of the things that disappoints me most about my reaction to it all was the fact that being on a football team, or whatever sport you play, you're part of a team. It's not an
Yep.
individual sport.
Yep.
So in football, you have 11 guys on a side, and if every guy isn't doing their job, the machine doesn't run well, right? Kind of the Bill Belichick way.
Sure.
And I was thinking, I was coming at that from a very individualistic kind of
Mhm.
attitude right there. I was saying, look at the numbers I put up in this game. Look at like what you know, and it was, I didn't make the final call. Coach does that, and
Sure.
I was there to serve to serve a team and
Yeah.
to be a member of a team. And so anyway, that was that's something that I had really lost sight of, I think.
Sure.
Um, when I did get injured, when I did put my hand through that window and everything, and the season was
Mhm.
over, I was terrified of a couple of things. Number one, it's the first time since third grade that I wasn't going
Mhm.
to play football. Number two, I wasn't sure what kind of use I was going to have of my
Mhm.
hand again, having cut the nerves and tendons the way I did. And number three, I didn't know how that was going to affect moving forward with the Marine Corps.
Mhm.
So, fortunately, I was able to, you know, use my hand again and everything. But I did lose a lot of like the sensation in it.
Mhm.
Um, anyway, I started worrying though, like I just couldn't imagine not playing football. So I needed something to fill that void. And I began thinking of things that I could do, this and that. And I just remembered I always had a love for theater from when I was a kid, for acting, for entertainment. I was very much sort of like a clown, like a funny, you know,
Mhm.
try to be the funny guy a lot
Mhm.
and all that kind of thing. And so I started taking theater classes at Gettysburg,
Mhm.
and it was a wonderful experience. It kind of brought me back into that world, and I continued doing that for the next 3 years.
Gotcha. So, and then what was the story with the military at this point with the Marine Corps?
So, so the way officer candidate school works is you go summer after freshman year. Well, you can do it one way or another. You can do it in one long summer, but that would have
Yeah.
prevented me from going to football camp on time.
Sure.
So I did it summer after freshman year, and I would go back summer after junior year, or so I
Gotcha.
thought.
Got
Um,
it.
ju- yeah, going into junior or during, I came back from that injury sophomore year, and junior year, about maybe the third weekend in a scrimmage, I tore my ACL,
Mhm.
MCL, and PCL in my right knee, and that was the
That's
end of that season.
got it.
So, and that
That's
also,
huge. I mean,
yeah, that was the
that's
end of going to OCS after that summer. So the idea was I would go instead summer after senior year now. So the plan was to be, you know, commissioned as a second lieutenant upon graduation.
sure. Yep.
That wasn't going to happen at graduation, so I thought I would go back. But
Got it.
I went back again senior year, and the second day of preseason, I tore the ACL, off the screws, and the MCL again on the same knee. And that was the whole end of the whole Marine Corps
Got it. I see.
as a
And it,
whole.
yeah. And again, this is the caveat here is that, look, we're doing a 45 to 60-minute podcast episode, and we're glossing right over all this like real, very challenging time, and so, but that's, I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, I mean, I would get injured in lacrosse. But I never had a devastating injury. Of course, I did just recently, 2 years ago, rupture my Achilles playing badminton, but yeah, you can make fun of
Oh,
me for that after
no,
the
no,
episode.
no.
Um, but yeah, thankfully didn't ever have such a devastating injury, during my college career in lacrosse. But I mean, that's huge. And so, yeah. So 2 different years in a row, it sounds like you had
Three. Well,
three. Well, you had
two on the field, one
yeah,
off the field
right.
incident. Yeah,
So three major injuries, whether self-induced or not,
yeah,
and so that kind of derailed both your football career and your OCS, your military career. And by the way, I did do OCS in the Army later, but it's the long summer in Georgia, which was super hot,
yeah,
but and also very challenging, and also great experience, and also lost a lot of weight
yeah,
during
for
that,
sure.
so I can relate to a lot of that. But this isn't about me. And so you got back into, kind of a blessing in disguise. It sounds like you got back into acting and theater. So how did that go from there?
So, well, like I said, yeah, I did. I started doing the one act plays and some of the other plays at school and everything, and I loved it. I caught the bug,
Hmm.
again. I had forgotten how much I missed it, and so I very quickly, in the back of my mind was, am I going to go pursue a finance job, or am I
Hmm.
going to give this acting thing a shot?
Hmm.
And now during all of this, I'll just tell you, at school, my drinking, which was already an issue that I didn't recognize, but it was only progressing with all of these
Hmm.
injuries and the inability to go out and get that energy out that I spoke of at the beginning.
Hmm.
Um, I was searching for just escape, total escape, and it was scary because my lack of presence for a long time, at Gettysburg and beyond, was really, it was a little bit scary. It's scary looking back on it.
Hmm.
The need for escape, the
Hmm.
search for escape and everything, kind of fueled me. And when you're doing that, it's very hard to be present and
Sure.
focused. So, but anyway, yeah. So we got through college, graduate. Told my dad, I think I'm going to give this acting thing a
Hmm.
shot. And my dad said to me, just promise me, if you're going to do it 100%.
Hmm.
After
Okay.
college, I moved to Manhattan. I studied a bit more there, and then I knew in the back of my mind that I was going to have to go to LA.
Hmm.
I'd have dreams about Los Angeles and the industry and all this kind of stuff, and I had never been to LA. I'd never.
Hmm.
I was dreaming about what I thought LA was,
Right.
and so one day I packed up, and at 24, I drove cross country, and I didn't have a place to live, anything. I just said, oh, I'll figure it out. It was part of the adventure,
Wow.
and it was awesome. It was a very exciting time in my life, for sure.
Did you have, I mean, you must have had a friend out there or some kind of like remote semblance of a plan, right?
Not really. So truly, not really. When I was driving cross country, a friend of a friend said, "Hey, do you know that uh, Danny and Jared moved out there? These guys are a few years younger than me, and Danny's coming home. Jared's going to need a roommate." And I said, "Cool. Where is it?" And they said, "It's in Van Nuys." And I was like, "It sounds glorious." And Van Nuys was anything but glorious at the time, and and but it was great. It was just, you know what I mean? It was something, it was the opposite side of where I grew up. I grew
Hmm.
up in a very small, kind of cookie cutter town.
Hmm.
Um, Very fortunate to grow up there. It
Sure.
offered a lot of opportunity, and it was idyllic in a lot of ways. But
Hmm.
it was also very much a bubble, as so many small towns are.
Sure.
And so I knew as a kid I wanted out. Like,
Mm.
the Marine Corps was going to offer me that. Now this is
Yeah.
going to offer me that. I was just like, I'm leaving. So,
Got it.
so yeah, it was all very, very exciting, and
Hmm.
uh, and all very eye opening as to how very little I knew about life in the real world.
Yeah. Okay. So you get to LA and what happens?
I get out there, and I didn't know anything about the entertainment industry. I was just trying to figure it out. So first thing I did was I got a job. I actually got three jobs. I was working at a clothing store. I was doing flooring demolition, and
Hmm.
at night, through the night, and then I would do. I was working at the Sony studios, just sort of as an
Hmm.
office grunt. Do this, do that,
Okay.
file this way, whatever. But I was hoping, in being there, I might start meeting people, and
Sure.
get a leg up somehow. And and eventually I did. I met somebody there who introduced me, I think it was, to his mother-in-law, who became my first agent. And I was pretty fortunate in the first well, let me take this back a minute, because I don't want to gloss over an important thing.
Sure.
So I did that for the first, I moved there in March of '01,
Okay.
and in November of '01, I went home for Thanksgiving break.
Okay.
And now, I didn't drink really at all when I went out to Los Angeles.
Okay.
I think subconsciously, leaving where I was from, everything,
Mm-hmm.
it was an opportunity for me to leave the demons in the past too, even though I didn't verbally recognize them. I think
Sure.
subconsciously I knew they were there.
Kind of a reset.
And,
Yeah.
and then when I went back home at Thanksgiving, it was the night before Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
I got
Mm-hmm.
absolutely gassed up.
Yeah.
And when we left the bar that night, my friends were walking down the street and they were maybe 100 yards ahead of me or something. And I was looking for them. I see them and I go running down the sidewalk. And rather than just run on the sidewalk, I needed to make it interesting. And I chose to jump while running full speed off of like a 6-foot brick wall, which landed into a parking lot. And when I landed, my knee dislocated, my good knee at the time, and I landed on it and I shattered that knee into 7 pieces.
Wow.
That kept me home in Jersey. I had surgery. I was trying to recover. I didn't walk right for like, I don't know, probably about 8 months or so. And I got through that. I returned to Los Angeles, and fortunately, I kind of picked up where I left off, and very quickly I started booking national commercials and small roles on soap operas and
Mm-hmm.
co-stars and this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there was never, I seemed to have gotten away with it again. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I mean,
and
in hindsight, it's another pretty big warning. Like, hey, you
huge.
probably shouldn't be doing the drinking thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was never looking, I didn't have a lot of self-awareness. Years
Mm-hmm.
later, my brother would tell me, your self-awareness is seriously lacking. And he was so dead on.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in it and
Yeah.
you just, there's a refusal often, or just an unwillingness and or an inability to see that truth.
Sure.
Um, and so at that point I wasn't seeing it. And as I said, essentially I got away with it again. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
away with putting my hand through a window. I got
Right.
away with jumping off a wall, and now my career seems to be going pretty well.
Right.
And
Right.
while that can seem like a blessing in the moment to get away with something,
Right.
um, I sometimes wonder, if I didn't get away with it,
Mm.
would I have made some of these lifestyle changes a lot earlier? And who knows? You know,
Sure.
I have
Yeah.
no idea whether that's true or I would have or not. But
Right.
nevertheless, I do wonder sometimes. Anyway, I start booking some stuff. Catch the attention of a very powerful agent out there, and under his kind of tutelage, if you will, or whatever, I start booking some independent films and some leads very quickly. So everything moved very fast
Mm.
in my career, and at that time, and
Mm-hmm.
it seemed to be on a really good trajectory, and I was having a lot of fun,
Mm-hmm.
and I was doing pretty good work as well. There's something also to be said about things happening very quickly,
Mm-hmm.
because there was a lot that I didn't know. There was
Mm.
so much that I didn't know,
You mean
and that I was,
about life or about acting or just
well,
all
about
around?
life, about the business side of acting. You know what
Sure.
I mean?
Yeah.
It's much more than just showing up, knowing your lines and hitting
Yeah.
your marks.
Sure.
There's a business. There's a way to behave. There's an eagerness to learn and all this kind of stuff. And the speed at which some of the things that were happening, I don't know if that precluded me from I didn't have the appreciation that I do now. I'll tell you
Mm.
that. I'll tell you that. That's a
For
very,
some
very,
of the opportunities you were getting, and
yeah, yeah.
gotcha. So
Um,
what is that, just briefly, what is that like, for any actor who's trying to make it big? Because we talk in the entrepreneurship world, it's very different, being a great, I don't know, baker versus running a bakery or many
yes.
bakeries. Very different skill set running the business. So what is that like as an actor trying to make it big, from the business standpoint?
Um, understanding the game, and it's all a game. Everything's a game, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It's understanding the game is it would behoove anybody to understand the game before
Mm,
entering the game. And I was very much
mm,
with that energy that I had, with the
mhm,
enthusiasm that I had. And I think my enthusiasm it's been a real blessing in my life, and it
mhm,
could be a curse as well. But
mhm,
it has helped me in a number of ways to either gain attention or and whatever. So my enthusiasm kind of got me through the gates
mhm.
without necessarily knowing. I knew how to act. I don't mean that.
Right.
I'm talking
Right.
about the
Right.
business side of it.
Yeah.
Um, but and by the way, I could certainly have still and I'm still getting better as an actor. It's not like I know it,
You're
it's
right.
not
Right.
like that.
Sure. There's
But
always room for improvement. Understood.
yes, always. But especially if you see some of my early work. But but I yeah, I didn't really understand the game. I got in, it was sort of like trial by fire.
Hmm.
And there's something
Yeah.
to be said about that as well. But I don't know. I very quickly, so I booked a small movie called Unrest that
Okay.
Lionsgate put out. It was a horror film, and I
Hmm.
had a supporting lead in it. And the director of that, Jason Ibsen, amazing guy, he took me to dinner while we were shooting and said, I thought he was going to say, take it down a bit. I was doing a lot of improving. I was like kind of the class clown of the in the feature. That was my role.
Right. Right.
And so, and he said, look, I want to write my next film for you. And I said, oh,
Wow.
okay, cool. And sure enough, 9, 10 months later, he had a script, he had funding, and we were like heading out to Boston to shoot. And
Awesome.
after that, I did another film with Val Kilmer and another film with Topher Grace and Chris Pratt and Anna Faris. And things were moving
Yeah.
really well. And it was strange because now looking back, the more success that I was gaining, the less
Hmm.
belief I had in myself.
Hmm. Interesting.
Which,
Is that now why? I mean, that's a huge question, but why
no,
is
no.
that?
So I think I know now why.
Hmm.
From a very young age, I kind of bought into the narrative that I was going to screw it up anyway. Um, I, I don't know. As a kid, like I said, my energy, everything kind of thing.
Hmm.
Like I was all over the place. Like you'd be like, sit
Yeah.
down in class and pay attention.
Hmm.
I had a really hard time sitting still, just
Hmm.
and just looking. I didn't learn that way. Like it
Sure.
wasn't. I had a very hard time retaining just by being talked at,
Yeah.
and um, and so you'd get admonished by your teachers, your parents, whatever it might
Right.
be, and
Yeah.
they're all coming from a place of love. They're all
Yeah.
doing it because they want the best for you, of course.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
when you can't perform at the level that they want, or just do what they want, it doesn't come naturally. There's something there's a narrative that begins to unfold, and
Sure.
it's basically like, yeah, I'm going to screw it up anyway, I'm going to do it
Right.
wrong, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
also,
all, yeah.
just to chime in, I mean, you'd had three times your football career was taken away from you in a sense.
Yes.
Um, Whether you had a role in that or not, it doesn't matter. It's like, so something good
Right.
it was going well, and then it's ripped away from you, and then the
Yes.
military thing ripped away from you. So we don't even have to frame it whether you screwed it up or not, but it's like something's going really well and the conditions and your circumstances in your life are really good and things are taking off, but your experience has been that good thing is probably, those good things are often taken away from me. Is that fair to
Yes,
say?
and that started young, because like even like whether it was school and I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do, or at the
Hmm.
level that people thought I should be doing, whatever it was,
Hmm.
um, it was, we're going to threaten you with taking something away
Mm-hmm.
in order
Mm-hmm.
to motivate you to do good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that approach, I think, is much more of an old school approach. I don't think that's
Sure.
as prevalent today. I certainly hope not. Um, and it's a terrible approach
Mm-hmm.
because, or I should, it's less than stellar.
Yeah.
It instills fear,
Sure.
and it
Yeah.
makes fear your motivator,
Yeah.
and that can be a good thing in some at
Right.
times.
Yeah.
But to for fear to be the driving force behind everything, I don't
Right.
think that's
No, I agree.
necessarily the most optimal way to live and
Sure.
approach it.
Yeah.
So I had a fear, a level of fear in me that
Mm-hmm.
didn't even know,
Right.
and it was always there. And so as I started becoming and more successful per se,
Yeah.
fear, that voice
Yeah.
was becoming louder and louder.
Sure.
And I knew the one way that I could drown out
Escape.
that voice
Yeah.
was with substances.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah. And so, I mean, in that context, it makes sense that you would have that fear. But at the time that you're a rising star, um, not saying you're not a star now, but
no, I'm
when you're
not, dude.
a rising star, but from the outside, most people would say like, why would you have that fear? You're crushing it, man. Like
Right.
this makes no sense. So I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that, because for the, most of our listeners are not actors, but they're going to find themselves in a similar situation where they have that fear, and from the outside, it may look unwarranted. And so appreciate you being transparent and vulnerable there. But you turn to substances. So walk us through kind of, the next few years. How did that go?
Yeah. So, you know, I in as a young actor and everything in Hollywood, I was supplementing my income um, with doing, gig work. Like I was bartending at night, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was, which is a giant party scene. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
LA is a wonderful place, and
Mm-hmm.
it's also full of a lot of temptation and everything. But so I'm working literally like at the party per se.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm working in the biggest clubs in Los Angeles, bartending, this and that. And so I guess I was just around it, and I'm not blaming the clubs or anything. This is all
Mm-hmm.
my own doing for sure. But I just the places that I was working at just made it all very readily available.
Sure. Yeah. No, what I would say to that is, for the most part, all of us are really bad at some point your willpower, even if you didn't want to participate in some of those things, is just, that's your environment that you're in, whether you put yourself in it. That's probably the for all of us, that, it's like, don't put yourself in that environment if you're
Right.
not going to be able to, um, withstand the pressures. But again, we're beating you up in hindsight.
No, but
Um,
I'm glad you said that, because the thing about it is that I never the what you just said about recognizing, okay, maybe I shouldn't go into this environment, that would have taken me sitting down for even a minute
mhm,
and trying to be discerning about
mm,
my decisions. You know what I
mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that takes self-awareness, and I that was
Sure.
seriously lacking. And I look at, like, when I was playing football and as a running back and everything, I wasn't a giant guy. I wasn't going to necessarily run through you, but I was really
Sure.
shifty side to side,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I was very reactive in that sense.
Sure.
Well, um, with acting, that reactiveness was it can be a very good thing, because as long as you're being present and you're reacting honestly, it obviously
Mhm.
lends to good character work and everything.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but again, there's a time and place to be reactive, and
Mm.
it's not always, like, you know what I mean.
Right.
But
Right.
if you're coming from a place of fear, fear
Yeah.
will cause you to be a reactive.
Mm.
Fear will cause anyone to be a really reactive person. I
Sure.
mean, when you think of what happens when you get afraid, you jump, it's a reaction. It's exactly what it is. Well,
Mhm.
it's that same thing. If I was feeling afraid and not even knowing it, I was probably reacting in some way that was not going to behoove me long
Yeah,
term.
absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's, again, we have the advantage here of hindsight, and
Yeah,
looking back, and now we can say, okay, Jay didn't have the self-awareness to realize you were living in fear and reacting in ways that were making your situation worse,
right.
which is a strength of yours, the reaction, and whether it's mental or physical, can be a strength, but in that context it was not a strength. It was
Yeah.
making things worse for you. So, how did, let's fast forward a little bit, and I know you kind of hit, you hit rock bottom. What did that look like?
Yeah. So after doing a series of movies when I was younger and everything, I my drinking was just progressing. And it wasn't, I was never the kind of guy who woke up in the morning and was like drinking on the way to work or something like that. It wasn't like that.
Sure. Yeah.
But there's something, so I go to AA and I sit in
Mhm.
rooms, and the best part of AA is just is being in a room full of other people who have either gone through similar things that you have or whatever. But you listen to
Mhm.
these people and you
Mhm.
pick up on things in your own life, and it offers
Mhm.
a number of things. It offers, number one, an insight as to why I did things, or how I did things. But it also allows everyone in that room to not feel alone, because we're all
Mhm.
really good at saying, "Oh my God, I'm the only person who's ever done this," and blah blah blah. It's like,
Sure.
no, most likely you're not,
Right.
and most likely it's not as bad as we make it out to be.
Mhm.
I'm not robbing banks, or
Yeah.
stealing purses or whatever. I was not doing
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. It
Right.
was, but so I remember hearing the about alcoholism, and
Mhm.
some in the big book and in the room, they were saying it's an allergy of the body and an obsession of the mind. And I remember sitting in a meeting and hearing that for the first time and thinking about it, and I was like, wow,
Hmm.
that makes total sense. Because when I got drunk, I didn't know if I was going to be like the normal, just, jovial sort of social person that night, or if I was just going to be fired up and like, let's go. Who knows what was going to happen? Like it was like pouring
Mhm.
gasoline on fire. And I didn't know which one of those were going to come out. Well, that's the allergy part, because if
Mhm.
you're reacting to a sedative in a
Mhm.
way that's making you fired up through the roof,
Mhm.
most likely your body is allergic to that. Um, and the obsessive part was twofold for me. Number one, when I started drinking, I didn't have an off switch. My brother used to call me the one beer wonder. He'd say, if I wanted you to go out and you didn't want to go out, all I had to do was get one beer to your lips, and you were guaranteed to be the last person coming home. And there was no off switch. And
Mhm.
the other obsessive part was, and I didn't realize this till later either, was while I was drinking, let's say I drank on a Tuesday, I didn't drink on a Wednesday and Thursday,
Mhm.
uh, but I knew I was going to be drinking on Friday. That Wednesday and Thursday, my mind was thinking about what's coming up on Friday.
Mm. So you weren't present when you were
I
sober,
wasn't present
basically.
there either. Yeah,
Gotcha.
exactly. And I
I
was
see.
thinking about, I was thinking about the escape.
Hmm.
So
Got it.
anyway, my career started taking a nosedive.
Mm.
And now, at the time that it started,
Mhm.
like any typical addict or alcoholic or whatever, I
Mm.
blamed everything else but myself.
Yeah.
Couldn't possibly be my fault. And of course it was my fault. So the career was going down. I had a
So
number of, I'm sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, but you do think, because you never know, it could be, causality versus correlation. They're not the same thing, causation, correlation. So you do think that it was your drinking and substance abuse that was a direct cause to your career
I
decline?
think it was a part. I think the biggest part was that fear state of mine
Mm. Sure.
was had became consuming,
Got it.
and that's
Yeah,
what really did it.
I see.
Um, the things that made me attractive to producers or directors or whatever, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't mean physically attractive. What I mean is the enthusiasm that I
Yeah.
was talking about, and the joy of doing it all
Yeah.
was going away. I was becoming numb.
Yeah.
I was becoming uh, short tempered,
Mm.
um, and I was becoming all it like the gratification, the immediate gratification kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
was so much more abundant than it should have been, you
Mm.
know. And when that happens again, there's a serious lack of appreciation. There's a
Yeah.
lack of gratitude. There's
Mm.
certainly a lack of presence.
Sure. So
And
you're not present when you're sober. You're not really present when you're not sober. You don't
exactly.
have, and you didn't have long-term thinking, it sounds like, as far
No,
as,
I
you know,
didn't.
yeah.
No.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
So go ahead.
yeah, so the career started going downhill a bit. I had a number of other surgeries during this time,
Mm-hmm.
that were, you know, I kept running out there. I ran in the
Mm.
mountains for years, and this and that, and so just
Mm-hmm.
a number of different things happened. But and through those surgeries, I was on pain medication
Mm.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I developed a pretty good Vicodin habit for a number of years as well.
Mm.
And
Gotcha.
when I say pretty good, I mean pretty bad.
Yeah.
But
No, right. No, I appreciate you, and being vulnerable. And I'll just share, I had, back injuries, probably 15 years ago.
mhm,
And it was amazing to me how easily, just how quickly I was prescribed pain meds.
yeah,
In my case, it was tramadol.
yeah,
And if you Google tramadol, it's like, some people claim it's more addictive, physically addictive, than some of the harder core, because they call it a pseudo narcotic.
right.
It's not really a narcotic, but
You get
it
you get high
it's
off.
it's
I've had a
it's
lot of
it,
tramadol. Yeah,
yeah, it's addictive. It
yeah,
really is. Like, read some of the forums online, and so it's not something to mess around with. I'm not saying you should never take tramadol
right.
in all cases, but just be careful. And so, to the listener, it's like, it's not something to just take lightly. So sounds like you had a pretty bad
Yeah,
addiction to Vicodin.
yeah. Oh, it was pretty bad. I mean, I was taking, you know, about 120 milligrams a day for a
Mm,
number of years,
mm.
and that's a lot of that's
Sounds like a
12
lot.
12 10 milligram pills a day. I mean, it's a
Because
lot.
you need more and more to, I mean, to feel the same way that you
Right.
needed, 1/10 of that, right,
And
before.
what and again, like while this stuff is happening,
Hmm.
it's so it's not, I'm not trying to make an excuse, but it's so hard to even recognize it because
Hmm.
your body requires this stuff now
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
feel normal. So
Sure.
of course you're kind of going to do like your life starts becoming about the drug. You know, I think there's a I believe the word addiction is a Latin word
Mm,
for enslavement,
okay. Not
something along
sure.
those lines. And it's such a perfect thing because you're no longer living your life for you, or and most importantly, you're no longer living it for others as well. You know, I mean,
Yes. Yes.
community is so
Yeah.
important.
That's
All
right.
that happens with all of these substances and everything is isolation becomes more and more and more the
Yep.
daily norm. And that's
Absolutely.
just a terrible place to be because you're just living in your head at that point. And my
So
head
true.
already worked fast enough, and like it's so, you know, so many thoughts. So in what starts off as a pursuit for an escape
Sure.
very much becomes an enslavement by my own
Mm,
hand,
that's a
you
great
know.
way to put it. Excellent way
Yeah.
to put it. Yeah.
And so so this went on for a number of years, and during all this, you know, like I said, my career was faltering. I was doing some cool stuff. You know, I did like The Big Short and Bad Moms and some really
Mm,
big things in the middle of all this kind of
mm-hmm.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and never. What sucks is that I never looked at that and said, if you're able to book these things amongst these like absolute titans of the industry,
Yeah.
um, what you know what could you do, Jay, if you got your shit together, for lack
Yeah.
of a better term?
Absolutely.
You know
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
mean?
if you were sober,
Right.
and just really locked in, dialed in to your
Right.
career, I mean, yeah, those are some impressive things to be doing in those circumstances.
Yeah. And so anyway, during all of this, I ended up getting back together with a girl that I dated years prior, and it was a girl that I thought, we dated for a short time. We broke, we kind of split up, and I thought about her for years. For whatever reason, she was just on my mind,
Mhm.
and we got back together, and it was going really well, and then we went up to the San Francisco area for like an engagement party of one of her cousins.
Okay.
And at that point, I wasn't taking any pain meds.
Mm.
I really wasn't drinking, but a
Mhm.
few times a year. And on
Mhm.
those few times, I'd go big, but
Mhm.
I really wasn't doing it. I had started to kind of make some changes, and
Mhm.
then we go up there, and her cousins, at the after party are saying, "Oh, let's just do a shot. Let's do a shot." And
Mhm.
finally, I do one shot of Jameson, and that one beer wonder that my brother talked
Mhm.
about,
Yeah.
it happened,
You're
and
like Will Ferrell in Old School, once
yeah,
you
it
get
was Frank the
James.
Tank, exactly.
Exactly.
So,
Streaking through the gymnasium.
yeah, yeah, and which I might have done at Gettysburg, but
Good
the
thing
funny,
yeah, we're very happy there was no Instagram or
yeah,
whatever
oh
else
my
back
gosh,
then.
I know, but so there's something also like in AA terms, they call it the phenomenon of craving. And
Okay.
so it's like when you take that first sip or
Mhm.
whatever, the phenomenon of
Mhm.
craving
Mhm.
comes like over you. And
Mm.
it's just, I need more,
Mm.
more. You know what I mean? It's there.
Sure.
I don't know if I ever enjoyed a drink in my
Mm.
life. Like I think
Interesting.
about that. Like,
Yeah.
why would you do something so persistently and
Mhm.
so obsessively if you
Hmm.
don't even enjoy doing it? You know what I mean? I never took a sip and was like, wow, I taste the
Yeah.
aroma of
This is right.
leather and chocolate or whatever. It's
Fruit
like, no, it's
forward,
just like,
whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just need to
Gotcha.
take it down more. And so I took that first drink. Uh, they say it's the first drink that gets you drunk, because if you don't take that first drink, you're good to go.
Yeah. Right.
And I just went all in, and then
Mm.
it was cocaine all night. It was, you know what I
Mm.
mean? And it was just,
Mm.
it was just, needless to say. And the next day I'm meeting her parents,
Mm.
and I
Wow.
didn't sleep a wink. And so
Gotcha.
needless to say, that relationship didn't last. Weird.
Got it.
And,
What's
so,
what's her problem, right?
yeah, right. But I will say that night, that incident, that whole
Hmm.
thing,
Hmm.
for whatever reason, the next day I said, I'm
Mm.
never drinking again. I'm never doing that,
Gotcha.
drugs again. And I didn't, and I
What
quit. That's that's
what year was this
that
approximately?
was March of 2018.
Got it. Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I kind of white knuckled it. I got off everything, and I had, a few times at that point. Like I said, I wasn't taking pills or anything, but
Hmm.
it took me like 3 different tries to like really get off
Sure.
Vicodin. I mean, that stuff was nasty,
Super
nasty, way
powerful.
harder
Yeah.
than the booze. But I did stop, and that year I didn't jump into the AA program. I hired a life coach first, and I worked
Mm.
with him, and I started getting different, just different perspective, and
Hmm.
learning about awareness. And I remember him telling me that um, our awareness is like a toolbox. He said, so if I were to come to you and I give you some Fisher Price tools, and I said, Jamie, go build me this house,
Hmm.
and use these tools. The chances of you building a very good
Yeah.
structure is pretty
Wouldn't be
slim.
very good. No, it'd be
Right.
awful.
But if I gave you DeWalt tools, you have a
Yeah.
much better shot
Much
at
better chance.
building something,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Sure.
respectable. So he was saying that's very similar to our
Okay.
self-awareness. Is as we gain more and more, they become the DeWalt tools.
Hmm.
And um and it's through, he also said to me, he's like, you beat yourself up about a lot of things. He's
Hmm.
like, but it's pretty
Mhm.
clear that you didn't have that self-awareness. He's
Mm.
like, so how are you supposed to make the changes if you didn't have it?
Mm.
And I was like,
Great
yeah,
point.
I get it. And he's like, the difference comes when you get the awareness. Now, what are you going to choose to do with it? If
Mm.
you continue down that old path, well, then you kind of get what you deserve.
That's on you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But if
Gotcha.
you make the changes and are also not to be cliche but
Mm.
gentle enough with yourself.
Mhm.
It's a
Yeah.
learning curve. Like it's a
Right.
rewiring of the brain.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Especially with like opioids and stuff. That stuff
Sure. It's
really,
real. You're up against something real serious. It's not, you don't just say like, oh, I'm going to turn that off now. Yeah. And
yeah,
I think I can really, relate in a lot of ways as far as like just having come from team sports background to just that achievement and then the military as well. But
yeah,
just that achievement and just, I have high standards for myself. And
right,
I I think it's very easy for a lot of us who are entrepreneurs or achievers or just type A people who've, have that drive, and you have talked about that energy, to really not allow for any mistakes to be
yeah.
acceptable. I mean, and that, I think there's some level of, that's good to push yourself, of course, right? But so tactically speaking, over the last, say, 5 years, how does one get better at self-awareness? What do you do besides talk to a life coach? And I'm not dismissing that, but I'm saying,
No,
like,
no, no.
how do we get better at that as
Sure.
individuals?
That was just my like I was looking to like everything I do when I decide like, oh, I'm gonna do it, I
Hmm.
jump in. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna hire a coach, and he was
Sure.
wonderful. I did learn a whole lot. But that's not the only way to do anything.
Sure.
Um, a year into my sobriety, I went to my first AA meeting, and I did that because I was like, well, I don't understand why I was drinking the way that I was drinking, and
Hmm.
maybe if I go sit in a room with these people, I can learn something about myself. And of
Sure.
course, like the arrogant douche that I could be at times, like I walked into the room with no intention of doing the 12 steps or anything like that, because um, in my mind, I thought the 12 steps were a method to quitting, when in
I see.
fact it's a handbook, it's a guidebook for living a good
Mm.
life. Again, it's not the only way to do things whatsoever. I
Sure.
don't push anything on people. I don't
Hmm.
tell people not to drink or do whatever you want to do. Drinking and doing drugs is a lot of fun if you can do it the right way. You know what I mean? But
So, but you thought to yourself, you said, I already quit, so I don't need these 12 steps.
yeah, and very quickly I realized like, oh, these steps are not about just quitting. And
They're
if
bigger
you
than that.
read enough personal growth or like
Yeah.
self wellness, self-help books, whatever it is,
Sure.
everybody's really kind of saying the same thing, just
Right.
in their own rhetoric.
That's true.
And so the 12 steps, I mean, you can see that in like I said, different self-help books. You can see it in the Bible. You can see, I mean,
Sure.
it all kind
Yeah.
of follows, the same guidelines. And
Yeah.
and so there must be some sort of truth to it, and that's
Absolutely.
that's the way I look at it. But so I started going to those meetings. I read a lot of books. I started meditating,
Mm. Hmm.
to really work on my presence. And if I'm being completely honest, I've been terrible lately. So I'm glad I'm calling myself out right now.
Yeah.
Letting
It
it go.
changes. It changes now.
Yeah. But that was an absolute game changer. Breathing, breath
Yeah.
work
Yeah. I've
was,
been doing that myself this
yeah,
whole year. Actually, it's awesome. I
amazing,
mean,
right?
it's so good. It's really,
Yeah,
really good. I completely, I mean, you and I were athletes, hardcore, whatever, like
yeah,
tough guys or whatever, maybe. And I would have laughed. I mean, I never considered breath work. I mean, granted,
no,
now it's more popular, but it just sounds ridiculous. If you're going back to our college days, like, what are you talking about, man? Like,
yeah,
that's insane. I mean, I've barely missed any days this entire year. And it's not to say, I don't need a pat on the back, but it's really been a game changer. It's been like, I mean, it's 10 minutes a day is what I do every
yep,
morning. I do breath work, and it's been phenomenal just to kind of reset and just, I mean, the physiological benefits and mental health benefits are huge.
Totally.
So
And one of the other things that I did was, I've always been extremely blessed to be able to make friends, and
yeah,
I really
you're a
love
very
people.
likable guy, easy to
Well,
be
I
friends with.
appreciate you. So are you. But I really love people. Like, I
Yeah.
truly have love for people. And
Hmm.
when I was using and drinking and everything, like,
Hmm.
that was just, it was
Hmm.
dissipating so much, and
Gotcha.
it was such a sad thing.
Hmm.
But um, so when I started making a lot of these changes in my life, one of the things that I had heard over and over was, if you want to know the type of person that you are, look at the 5 people you hang out with most.
Hmm. Yep.
And I remember looking, and I, this is nothing against some of the people that I used to hang out with,
Right.
because in the same regard that they probably weren't serving my best interests, I
Sure.
wasn't serving theirs either. You know what I mean? We were
Yeah.
the same people, just on different sides. So, so I really started becoming, more cognizant of who I was hanging out with, who I was
Hmm.
listening to,
Yeah.
what I was putting into my body, in terms of,
Sure.
I've always been fairly healthy in terms of outside of the
Yeah.
drug involvement.
Yeah,
Um,
no,
you
that
know,
might sound like ridiculous, just based on the context that we've already gone over and we've
yeah,
presented here. But I hear you. You can drink and even do drugs and generally have a very healthy diet and
right,
exercise. Um,
exactly.
yeah.
Um, but I was, like, even cognizant of, like, the music I was listening to
Hmm.
and the movies that I was watching. And again, I like them all. I like everything from,
Yeah.
like, gory horror to a
Yeah.
romantic comedy. I like
Right.
everything. But what I realize is, like, if I had a meeting with you later on in the
Yeah.
day, well,
Sure.
maybe I don't need to be listening to the heaviest heavy metal early in the, because my cortisol is going to be through the roof, and that's not going to serve me. So
Yeah.
I just started paying attention to, if I do this, then this might happen. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Yeah.
The
It's really
kind
good.
of chain reaction
Yeah,
that
absolutely. No, I've been just briefly, I've been my daughter, my 16-year-old daughter doesn't want to hear it from me, of course, but just who she follows on Instagram or what music she's listening to. Again, I sound like my parents did back in the day. I have no issue with rap or any other kind of music, but if it's like the heart, you just have to be, just be aware of me, because if 95% of what she's listening to is kind of like, really hardcore rap, and again, no issue with rap by itself,
right.
but it just, that becomes your thoughts, and eventually your thoughts become your behavior, and that's
Yeah.
like who you are, really. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
so,
No,
but no,
it's
yeah,
exactly right. Yeah.
yeah,
You're totally right. And there's a time and place for everything. That's it.
right, right,
It's sort of like, if you're in finance or something, and
yeah,
you hear the term diversify your portfolio. It's
right.
kind of like, well, diversify your life in enough too, where you're not solely stuck in one arena, because if that's all you're listening to, we become myopic. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it's just like, it's very, we're not malleable anymore. We're not as open to other
Yeah,
things. And so,
that's good.
um but and so to this day, I go to a number of AA meetings every
Hmm.
week. One of the greatest things that has come about from those meetings is the ability to be of service to other people. So
Mm,
I've been able to help a number of people in the
that's
rooms.
awesome.
Um, and then, even at the beginning of this year, I've never been a big social media guy. I don't like post my life up on
Sure.
social media all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
But the service thing is really important to me. And
Mm,
so at the beginning of the year, I made a commitment to myself that on the first of every month, or give
mm,
or take a couple days, I would
mhm,
put up a post on Instagram and Facebook,
mhm,
basically telling a little bit of my story,
Yeah.
through, journey through addiction and everything. And I
Yeah.
think that's how you
That's
saw.
that's why we're here, and that's
Yeah.
why my listeners are getting the opportunity to hear from you, and we're trying to help put your story out there to benefit other people. But that is why we're here. I wouldn't have, I mean, you and I hadn't kept in touch,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but I saw one of your posts and I was like, I gotta reach out and connect with him. So
Yeah.
good on
And
you.
so it's good because it was it's still an uncomfortable thing for me
Sure.
to do every month. But that willingness to go into the uncomfortable, to find and to
Yeah.
get comfortable in the uncomfortable, it's a
Yeah.
really important thing,
Yeah, absolutely.
and and while it's done as an act of service for others, we all benefit. Like
Mm,
nobody benefits from it greater than myself. I know that,
mm, that, sure.
um, and so it's a win-win. And and I so I started doing that, and it was amazing, Jamie. Like the number of people, I talked to, like I said, I help people in the rooms every week, but the number of people that reached out from my past, have reached out based on these posts,
Mm,
whether it be about themselves or somebody they
mm,
love or
mm,
whatever.
mm,
It was
mm.
remarkable. Like people I
Wow.
hadn't spoken to in 30 years, and
Wow.
they're like, "Hey, I read this. Could you maybe?"
That's
It's been
awesome.
amazing. That's
That's
awesome.
really cool.
And life's just better now. I'll tell you real quickly before we go. So, I came home during COVID. I needed it. I called my parents and I said, I'm going to come home for 6 weeks and do a physical therapy protocol out of hospital for special surgery in New York on my spine from an injury in the past.
Hmm.
And that 6 week therapy protocol turned into 6 surgeries over 2 years. And I looked crippled. I could hardly walk, and it was just, and it was it was screwing with me mentally, of
Mm,
course. In
sure.
addition to that, some of the doctors I went to, I chose to go to certain doctors. I
Hmm.
handed over my savings basically,
Hmm.
like, and that's okay. It's just money. I
Mm,
mean, it's
hmm.
it's serious, but that was an incredible amount of stress it's been for the last couple of years. It's been
Mm,
crazy. And basically losing, I don't want to say everything because it's not everything, but losing
mm.
the financials, that's a serious thing at our age.
Yeah.
Um, but and not to sound cliche, it's also been one of the most beautiful times of my life. I produced
Mm,
this film, Black, White, and the
yeah.
Grays, in the middle of all of this.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which
I'm
is
more
very,
proud of
very
it.
good, by the way. I've
Thanks,
watched it.
man.
It's awesome. I
I
highly
appreciate it.
recommend the listener to go check that out. Black, White, and the Grays for
Yeah,
sure.
it's on Amazon Prime Video and
Yeah,
YouTube.
talk tell us
Yeah,
real quick. Talk about the movie.
yeah.
What's it
So
about?
the movie revolves around an interracial couple on the verge of divorce, quarantining together during the pandemic and
Yeah,
Black Lives Matter movement. So
yeah.
it's real. It's a comedy, and no, it's very much not. But
Nice.
it's a terrible pitch too. When I tell people that's like what it's about, it's like, why do I want to watch this movie? But I would implore you and encourage you, like it is a film that you're not expecting that at
Right,
all, and it's a film for everybody.
for
There's
sure.
no political biases in it. There is no agenda to it except to create open discourse and tolerance of one another and understanding, like
Yeah.
compromise, things that were
Those are,
just so
yeah,
lacking.
those are bad words apparently in today's culture.
Exactly.
No, my wife and I both really enjoyed it, so I definitely
Thank you.
recommend
Thank you.
everyone watch it.
But so there's been all of this crazy stuff that have happened in the last couple of years with my health and with finances and all this kind of stuff. And in the middle of it, I got to produce the film that I'm most proud of,
Mm,
the piece that I'm absolutely most proud of as an actor
mhm,
and a producer. Um, and also, it's been an opportunity to put in practice so many of the things that I've been working
mm,
on myself,
mhm,
because I'm just going through the fire right now. That's
mm,
the deal. I'm being tested,
mhm.
and
Yeah.
either I can recognize it for what it is as a
Hmm.
test, and I
Yeah.
can try to do my best in that situation, no matter
Yeah.
how hard it might be, or I can try to escape, and I know where that's going to lead to because
Sure.
I tried that before.
Well,
And
it's interesting.
yeah,
I was actually talking to my sister who was on my podcast.
I remember that one. It was great. That was the first one I
Yeah,
listened to.
I just saw her um 2 days ago in Brooklyn. But anyway, we were saying that, I was saying basically it would be awesome to have interview someone now when they're in adversity, because most of our guests, and again, no one's ever done with adversity. We don't pretend like, oh, I had a hard upbringing and now I have all my problems are gone. No one's life is like that, but it would be cool to interview someone who's kind of in the thick of it still, and then, kind of
Totally.
in real time, we'll have to follow your path to abundance, Jay,
Yeah,
and bring
and
you
we can
back.
talk again for sure. I mean, because there's certainly, I mean, there's a lot of like, there's some stuff going on.
Yeah,
Like you said, that's everybody. And and what I'm going through right now doesn't compare to somebody else's and
yeah, yeah,
whatever,
right.
but
But
it's mine.
it's real. It's
It's
real
real.
though.
Yeah.
So
Um,
I have a few before we get to my rapid fire questions.
yeah, please.
How do you do, like, when you talked about the five people, that you hang out with, you're essentially the average of the five people that you associate with the
Right.
most. How does someone become intentional about, do you just say, I'm never speaking to you again? If you, to somebody who's not a good influence on you, how do you navigate that from a practical standpoint? Because it sounds good, but how do you actually implement that, saying, no, I'm now going to only allow these positive influences in my life, and I'm going to be a positive. How does that work?
I don't think, I mean, maybe some people just say, look at their five friends and be like, you're out, I'm done. I don't know. Maybe that's how some people do it. For me, it wasn't like that. It was more just like I started thinking about the person that I wanted to be, and versus the person who I thought I was, because that was some very gray area there. I
Hmm.
in as I got sober, it was scary how much I was not the person I thought I was, and
Mm,
I wasn't the person that I thought other people thought I was. If that
mm,
makes sense,
yeah, makes
my
sense.
my perception of what people thought of me was not accurate.
Mm,
Um, so I started thinking about what I wanted to be, who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, and I just started making gradual steps toward
hmm.
those, I guess, toward those goals.
Sure,
Um, and those goals didn't, include going out to the bar 3 times a week, or didn't
sure,
include, you know what I mean?
yeah,
So in just kind of taking an alternative path,
yeah,
um, it presented opportunity to meet people who are more in line with, where I was headed.
sure.
And I think it just kind of naturally happens. But again, the people from my party days and everything,
Hmm.
I don't hate them. I still drop
Right,
them a
right.
line here. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
most of them have made giant changes themselves. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So
It's
they're
awesome.
wonderful people. Like I
Yeah.
said, it wasn't their fault at
Right.
all. It was,
Well, it may, and like, maybe it was good for them that you weren't around. I'm not putting
yeah,
you down, but it
of
sounds like
course.
it probably mutually beneficial to
That's what I
kind of,
mean.
yeah, yeah,
It's a group effort. It's
yeah.
it's a we thing. It's
Right.
not. There's no blame to an individual.
I just figured that your first call was going to be to Jay Ferrugia and say, I can't hang out with you anymore.
No, no. So Farouk, it's so funny, dude, that Farouk. So Farugia, Farugia is one of the guys when I met him,
Hmm.
um, that was really an influence on me, and
Hmm.
not in the way that he never told me, you ought to do this so he never
Yeah,
told me.
he wasn't preachy about it, right?
No, I just
Yeah.
started paying attention to the way he did things and everything, and he
Hmm.
kind of popped up at a time where
Hmm.
I a lot of
Needed.
changes were beginning
Yeah.
from.
And for the listener, it was a bit of an aside, but Jay Ferrugia is a big fitness guy, and Jay and Jay are very good friends. So we'll have to, on our follow-up episode, we'll have to dive into how you met him, and
Yes,
all that.
definitely,
Um, but yeah, I've he's a great person to follow for sure.
for sure.
Um, so um, anything else you want to touch on? I do have a bunch of some rapid fire questions, but
Yeah.
you know, is as far as what you have going on right now professionally, black light and grays is black, white, and the grays, sorry.
Yep. No, it's all right.
Is that's the main
Black
thing.
light in the grays is like
Black light.
it's like a hippie dorm room.
It's funny. I knew it, and I looked at my notes and I wrote it down wrong in my notes. But
that
that's
that movie's out right now. It's only been out for about a month, but it's doing great. It'd be, check it out if leave a review. There's another. So Casey Nelson, was the brains behind this, the idea for Black, White, and the Grays. He and Marshall Thurman wrote it and directed it. Casey has a number of other projects, but there's one called The Music Makers that I'm really trying to put together right now, and some other ones as well.
nice.
So
Awesome.
yeah,
Cool.
that's coming.
All right, you ready for some rapid fire questions before we get
Let's
out of
go.
here?
Absolutely.
All right. What is one thing that people misunderstand about you, Jay?
Oh my gosh.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I'm not going to lie.
One thing that people misunderstand about me is,
Come on, you're supposed to have quick reflexes.
yeah, sorry. Okay. I guess, sometimes there's a lot more going on inside than the smile that I often put on the outside.
Okay. So that's a good answer. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self some advice, what would that be?
Decide what's most important to you and put all your
Love it.
focus toward that.
Love it. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, they could still be alive today, who would that be?
Oh my goodness. That's a
You can
good
say
one.
me. You can say the lacrosse legend of Gettysburg.
Yeah,
I'm
Jamie,
kidding.
aren't we having this conversation?
Yeah, that's right now.
No, let me think about that one second. Somebody that I don't
Doesn't
know.
have to be your only cup of coffee. Yeah, we can come back. If
Yeah.
you were given $10 million tomorrow, Jay, what would you do with it?
I would. God, Jamie, $10 million. I would help a lot of people. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
I would help a lot of people.
Awesome.
I would set, there would be some allocation of funds to some people that I know could use it, but there would also be, I would put that money toward, I don't know whether, like, I have a charity, so it would go some of it
Okay.
through that, like kind of building that out. I also would have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna like, I would travel. I would be adventurous and probably do some things that could probably land me in the surgical room again.
Oh, jeez. We'll need like somebody to help oversee this direction of funds or something like that. But
Yeah, exactly. I'll call Labrador.
yeah, there you go. Do you think of someone you want to have coffee
Who I'd
with?
want to sit, Jackie Robinson, maybe.
Okay.
What an amazing, talk about, going back to the thing I said a minute ago, like focus on the things that are important for, put all the focus toward that and go forward.
Sure.
I mean, what a story of perseverance.
Yeah.
And not only perseverance, but high performance while going through the fire. I mean, we talk about that time going through the fire. That dude went through the fire, from beginning to end, and still put up,
yeah, absolutely,
MLB numbers. So that's
awesome.
There's got to be. I bet I could learn a lot from that guy.
Absolutely, we all could. What is an occupation that you would try if you could just randomly switch to another occupation?
Military.
Love it. Great answer. All right, Jay Jablonski, what is one question that I have not asked you that you wish I had? We can save it for the follow-up interview. but
Yeah.
just want to make sure we've covered everything you want to.
No, I think so. And I hope, I mean, is there a question? Is there anything that you wanted me to talk about, or?
No, I mean, the only other question is where we can, where our listeners can find you online, reach out to you
Yeah.
if, if they need, if they'd like to.
Yeah, please. So I'm on Facebook as just Jay Jablonski, though I don't really, I guess more the one I use is Instagram. It's Jay
Mhm.
Jablonski and the number one. And, our film is at Black, White, and the Grays. We have blackwhiteandthegrays.com, and then on Instagram, just Black, White, and the Grays. And, yeah, and you can
Awesome.
check me out on IMDb if you want. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, I really appreciate you not only taking the time, but just being so vulnerable, Jay. It's not, it's probably easier to, I don't know, but it's one thing to put up a post, but it's hard to come on here and talk about these things. And I appreciate you being real and being vulnerable for the benefit of the listener and all of us.
Yeah, man.
A couple of points, just the self-awareness thing was huge. Just being, just for all of us to try to, just get better at being self-aware. And then just through that is in your case, learning about fear and how big fear, what a big role that fear was playing in your life. And again, we're all a work in progress. And
Sure.
so, absolutely. You dropped a lot of, actionable knowledge, and, you have a
You
super
know,
interesting story. So go ahead.
yeah, the one thing I would say is, this isn't reinventing the wheel or anything. No matter what situation that we find ourselves in, whether it's brought about by our own hand or by somebody else's, there's never going to be, we're the only we can pull ourselves out of it. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
that's really hard, because especially if you find yourself in a place, um, that it wasn't your fault why you got there.
Yeah.
In my case, it was my fault 100%. I'm just saying,
Mhm.
in other people's cases, though, it might not be, but
Yeah.
there's no lifeboat coming.
Yeah.
And what will happen is, if you, it's, we have to take the first steps
Sure.
to getting ourselves out of that situation. And
Yeah.
as we start making a little bit of progress, I think other people start recognizing,
Mm.
and then they start, oh, well, maybe I can help you in this way, maybe. But we
Mhm.
also
They buy
have to
in.
be open to
Mhm.
asking for help.
Sure. No,
It's
absolutely. I think those are all very good points. It's not that you're alone and you're going to have to fix 100% of everything. And because obviously community, as you said earlier, community is huge
right.
with all of this, but you do have to take ownership of your situation,
Yeah.
regardless of whether you put yourself there or not. I think of Jocko Willink wrote a book called Extreme Ownership, and
Sure.
it's like he talks about and he talks about it on his podcast all the time, whether you created this environment that you find yourself in or not, doesn't matter. You're
Yeah.
here. So
You're
to get
here.
out,
Exactly.
you've got to own it and take responsibility for fixing it. That would
Exactly.
also include asking for help, like you said.
Yeah.
Um, so speaking of book, before we wrap up, do you have any other book recommendations?
The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I need to read that
um,
one.
Amazing book. This one is, I think everybody says this, but The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho.
Sure.
It's just written in such a way that's so, it's just so relatable, and it's like, oh, it's like another guidebook for life. Um,
Sure.
uh, and the Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. Do you know that book?
Okay. No, I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know that one.
I'm gonna send you that book.
Okay.
It's basically it's like a picture book, um,
Okay.
and it's one of the most beautiful books, like, that kind of sums up life in an amazing way.
Okay.
So
You don't think I can handle the other books with words?
I don't, I want to give you a
I'm
break.
just joking.
I don't know how many times you got hit in the
Yeah,
head.
exactly. That's true. So, all right. Well, Jay, this has been a lot of fun, man. This is really, again, I
It's been
appreciate you
awesome.
taking the
I
time and being.
appreciate you reaching out, and it's been great reconnecting, and we're gonna stay in touch for sure.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot, Jay. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jamie.
And to the listener out there, thank you for spending your most valuable resource with us, and that is your time. Thanks, everyone. Take care.